From the KELOLAND Digital Desk, I'm meteorologist Scott Mundt, and this is Weather or Not for Wednesday, October 22nd. In our weather outline for today, we're talking about the cold air that finally arrived as temperatures fell to the 20s in eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, and northwestern Iowa, some of the coldest air of the season so far. Still have our eyes on October 28th. And we're also looking at Halloween, as that is in the 10-day forecast. And we'll end with our snow trend as we continue to go through the month of October. November is just around the corner. Let's talk about today's weather. Sunshine will continue for the rest of your afternoon and into this evening with mostly clear skies. Our wind, a nice break from the wind that we've had very strong winds over the past couple of days. Not the case for today. We'll go with light wind speeds around 5 to 15 miles per hour. As we get into the overnight, we'll continue with clear skies. Winds will remain light. Temperatures will fall close to 30 degrees. That patchy frost will be possible eastern and southeastern KELOLAND as we get into the overnight hours and early tomorrow morning. And for tomorrow, it will be another sunny day. Temperatures may be a little bit warmer, especially across eastern South Dakota, pushing 60 degrees. That's above average in eastern KELOLAND. And as we look at futurecast for Friday, notice it does bring in thicker cloud cover, eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, throughout much of eastern Nebraska. We do have thicker clouds for Friday. There is a system to our south, and thinking is that it will stay to our south. The best chance for the rain will be, looks like Kansas, Oklahoma, maybe eastern Texas. Storm system is strong enough to bring in a cloud cover for us. We'll have stronger southerly winds for Friday, and that will help us warm. Temperatures probably returning to the 60s for many of us. So enjoy the break from the wind because it will come back. There's Friday southerly wind gust 20, 25 miles per hour. That will be felt across eastern South Dakota. For Saturday, everybody will have a southerly wind, 25 to near 30 miles per hour. As temperatures continue to slowly warm, we may see numbers return to the 70s in western South Dakota this weekend. But look what happens on Sunday. Strong southerly winds throughout much of central, east central to northeastern South Dakota. Expect a strong southerly wind on Sunday. That's ahead of that rain chance that will move in early next week. And as that happens, it'll help cool the temperatures to the 50s. Speaking of temperatures in the 50s, we'll have that today across eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa. Low to middle 60s today for central and western KELOLAND. This all happens with light winds of 5 to 15 miles per hour. Patchy frost possible tonight as temperatures fall to near 30 eastern KELOLAND, lower 30s in Pierre and in Rapid City. Winds will remain light. Coming up after the break, we'll talk more about this cold air that settled in across the area last night and into early this morning. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back to Weather or Not. The cold temperatures, coldest air of the season so far this morning as we had numbers fall to the 20s in eastern South Dakota. Lowest temperature since midnight down to 28 in Sioux Falls, 26 in Aberdeen, Worthington, and Spencer, Iowa. We fell to 27 in Brookings, Watertown, and Huron, 29 in Mitchell. Numbers were a little warmer central and western South Dakota as you see our temperatures there. In the middle 30s, but Pine Ridge, 21 degrees this morning. What about tonight? Tonight we could see temperatures that can fall close to 30. So still looking at least a possibility for a frost in eastern KELOLAND tonight. This happens with mostly clear skies, light winds, You see temperatures falling around 30, eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, maybe a little warmer in central and western South Dakota, with temperatures in the 30s for those locations. Still looking at October 28th. You know, this goes back to that 40, 45-day cycle or pattern that we're on. Also, the 90-day fog cycle that a lot of people like to follow. I know that they circle these dates on their calendars too. So let's go ahead and talk about this weather pattern. We'll make this graphic full. We continue to follow these upper-level low-pressure systems, okay? Dating back to Monday, where the model was thinking it would be across eastern Kansas on Monday, which is actually a good setup for us to get precipitation. Right now, or excuse me, yesterday, it moved it a little farther to the south. And today, it's in good agreement with what it had yesterday, maybe a little bit farther to the east. But we're also following a connection with another area of low pressure in the southern Canada. So we'll have to watch that, as these will be connected somewhat. If you draw that line, that this is a good access to bring in our rain chances as we begin early next week, where we can see maybe some widespread rain stretching from eastern Texas all the way into western North Dakota. And we'll see that Monday, even extending into Tuesday. It may move across in the eastern South Dakota into Minnesota and Iowa. And here again is a recap. I'll just do a quick recap on what we're following. Dating back to August, when we had that cutoff low-pressure system move through southern Canada, the upper plains, to September 18th, another cutoff low moving slowly across the area to help bring in better rain chances to the northern plains. So between those two dates, ends up being, on average, I would say 40, 45 days. And you count that out, and that takes us to, well, October 28th through maybe November, beginning of November, to see this next cutoff low. Right now, it wants to bring it in a day early, around the 27th. But this also lines up with this thick fog theory, as you see, dating back since July 30th. It takes us out 90 days to October 28th. So it's very interesting to see how these things do align to bring in precipitation. And that's something that we will continue to follow as we do go through the next several days. So once again, we are following the fog theory across the area. That is something that we'll also follow as we get into November and December. Coming up next, we'll take a look at Halloween. Stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. You know, I really did not think of this until now. The Halloween outlook. That's the best boo that I have. I should have gone with the ghostly boo. I have to find that somewhere. And I'm running out of time, too, to find it. Halloween's getting closer. All right, let's talk about Halloween. Here we go. Next Friday, we are looking at, it brings in a couple of showers on Halloween. I'll say parts of eastern, southeastern KELOLAND. Right now, very, very light. Keep in mind, it's a good week and a half out. We'll see what happens. But I think the temperature trend here, what you see is what you get, really. I know we've had a couple of days with these below average temperatures, but when you look at what's going on with our averages, a lot of these days have been above average. And I think that that type of trend will continue as we do get into Halloween with temperatures being above average. Let me go ahead and take this full, and I'll play that graphic too, because we have the average highs that eventually start to come in. By Halloween, it's 53 in Sioux Falls, 51 in Aberdeen, 52 in Pierre, and 53 in Rapid City. So in general, yeah, above average temperatures expected to continue as we do make our way into Halloween. Let's go ahead and hit the graphic. We'll continue to follow that, as we've been following the snow trend too. I've been looking at a couple of things. I'm not sure exactly where I want to go with this, but let's go ahead and bring up this. This is the AI European model. And Brian and I discussed this yesterday, as this is looking at those the temperatures over the next several days. And right now, it's really good agreement here. Notice the blue colors signifying the cooler temperatures, and really good agreement with bringing those numbers more or less at or possibly even a couple of days being below average in our extended forecast. But before then, as we do get into the weekend, there's Friday's high of 60. Temperatures this weekend, you see those numbers are in the 50s on Saturday, 50 to near 60-degree weather for Sunday. This is the rain that's coming in on Tuesday. In fact, let me go ahead and bring in the precipitation forecast. You notice how it does bring in that rain chance early next week. And this is a look at maybe the amounts of rain to expect too. So it's Monday, Tuesday, possibly spilling over in the Wednesday morning, but very, very light. And then it tries to bring something in here around the Halloween time frame too. And those were those showers that I just showed you. So that's a look at the precipitation numbers. This is a look at the possibility for snow in a 6-hour period too. And look at that. Tries to bring in around 1/10 of an inch that first day of November. So that'd be quite interesting to watch, but not in good agreement with everything. Okay, I'm doing this on the fly. I want to bring in the deterministic, and let's go ahead and bring in our temperature with that one. As we are, and I'll do a different time frame here too. Let's go back to the 0Z. There we go. You can see our temperatures in the 50s, near 60 degrees for this coming weekend. And then as we get into maybe the Halloween time frame, it wants to keep temperatures, fairly warm, 56 degrees. But even after Halloween, it has the temperatures here in the 50s the first couple of days of the month. And I'm in more agreement with that, keeping those temperatures above average as we get into the first couple of days of November. And then what does it do for snow? Let's bring up this one. Nope, doesn't have snow at all on the deterministic. So very interesting. Even the European model going from the AI version to the regular version, the deterministic is what it's called. It's a little bit at odds. AI wants to cool us a little bit in the beginning of November. The other model does not. Wants to keep it at or above average and keeping the snow out as well. So kind of an interesting trend that we will continue to follow at the digital desk and on whether or not. And I know Brian will be back tomorrow. He'll join us in on this conversation too, as to his input on what he thinks will ultimately win out with what happens maybe during the first couple of days of November. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow. And let's talk about our weather pattern here as we do get into this weekend. There's that system to our south, okay? That will keep the rain chances. Kansas, Oklahoma, eastern Texas. It will be strong enough to bring in some cloud cover for us, but I think we will remain dry as we do go through this coming weekend. Here's our system for early next week, and I'll back out again. I mentioned our trend here to watch the upper level low pressure system here into parts of Oklahoma, maybe eastern Texas. That's the way that it looks right now. But it may also be connected to another area of low pressure into southern Canada. And then that acts as a good focal point to bring in these rain chances, including us here in KELOLAND. So that's the reason why we are looking at rain early next week, starting across western South Dakota, eventually moving into eastern and southeastern KELOLAND. As we do get into maybe Monday night and Tuesday, I think our best chance for rain across the east will end up being Tuesday. Then there's Halloween again. Notice how it's trying to bring in those light rain showers as temperatures do remain above average. And then what happens after that? Into that first couple of days of November, that first weekend of November, well, it keeps us warm. Maybe a ribbon of precipitation here. But the thing about this is we'll be caught in that northwest flow. So we do have to time a couple of things trying to come in from the northwest if that happens, and also have to bring in its own moisture with it. So will it rain there as we get into the 2nd of November? We'll have to see how much moisture is actually available. But we'll follow that, as I really am in good agreement here with keeping those temperatures, I would think, above average. That's going against what I just showed you on the AI, but still above average as we go through that first full weekend of November. But what happens after that? It brings in this trough. okay, across the southwestern United States. This is toward the tail end of that first full week of November. Still being above average here across eastern KELOLAND. And what typically happens is if we're able to bring in these troughs across the southwest and they move into the central, maybe the northern plains, that helps the temperatures warm out ahead of it. Okay, we've been through this many, many times, and that's what we continue to follow is when these troughs dig across the southwest, we have that warm air out ahead of it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see these temperatures stay above average until we see what happens with this trough as it comes in from the southwest. Okay. It also has this wide area here. That's a lot of real estate with below average temperatures in the western part of the United States. So we'll see as we get into maybe the tail end of November what happens with this trough across the southwest. So our snowfall outlook, this is for the next 2 weeks. And notice how it does fill it in, and I highlighted it too, into western Nebraska. Brings in at least a chance of seeing some accumulating snows. That's at the very end. This goes out 2 weeks, and that is November 5th when that starts to paint in at least that snow chance into western Nebraska. Notice how it spills over into parts of South Dakota and what you see there into the hills of western KELOLAND. I think a lot of that is connected to what's happening early next week with our rains that do move through western KELOLAND, maybe cold enough to support some snow for the higher elevations of the hills across western South Dakota. Otherwise, we'll see what happens with that trough. But what I do want to highlight, too, is you see what it's doing with that trough digs? Look at all this snow that's trying to dump across Colorado near Denver. So we have low pressure moving through, colder than average temperatures. We'll have some moisture available. So, yeah, we could see some accumulating snows as we do get into the beginning of November, but off to our west and to our southwest with that trough. And then all depends on what happens with that trough as it moves into maybe the central or the northern plains as we get into the later part of that first week of November. So, yeah, a couple interesting things to watch. And here's a look at our numbers for our snow trend. I'll probably end up changing that date here soon because that's getting close to our 7-day forecast. So once that reaches day 7 in our 7-day, I usually like to yank it out. So then this will eventually become November 10th, 20th, and 30th. As we continue to follow the different members of the European forecast. And I'll go ahead and bring up what that is showing right now as we are looking at this graphic right here. And I've been adding up the 100 members here on the side. There's the accumulating snows, and the dates, of course, are down here. This is your average for all these different members of the European model trying to bring in the measurable snow. So when we look back at this graphic, this is a look at more or less the chance of seeing measurable snow by the 30th of October, by the 10th of November, and by the 20th of November. The latest numbers are on top, okay? 13 out of the 100 for October 30th. That's getting at least a measurable snow, and then you see how it goes up to 44 and 65. And then I have the running average there from when I started. In Rapid City, it's a little bit higher, though the trend is to bring in less members as compared to what the average has been showing until you hit November 20th. Then it's been staying around 98, 99 on occasion of getting a measurable snow by the 20th of November. So that is something that we'll continue to follow here on Whether or Not. I do want to say thank you for joining us. Have yourself a great day.